Welcome, welcome, welcome. Bienvenidos and good evening, everyone. My name is Salvador Sauceda Guzman. I have the pleasure today of introducing our mayor, Muriel Bowser, here to our conference and walk here in the neighborhood. I happen to be the chair at Advisory Neighborhood Commission 5D. And here in South Ward 5, also known as the Big D, because we're home to the 5th District of the Metropolitan Police Department, the best in uniform here in the city. Yes, find out. And we want to thank everyone today. We want to thank everyone today for convening on this walk, and it will be guided by one of our ANC commissioners, Juan McCullum, and some of our mokers, also some of the best in the city here in Ward 5, yes. We look forward to innovative solutions and lifelong festering problems that could eventually allow us to chip away at bigger ones. And agencies and office directors, think of how you can bring different strategies or partnerships with how all you are currently tackling these matters today. And if there's something new, join in and help. Every single person with their feet on the ground and eyes to view this feed have an important role in terms of the livelihood and safety of our community. Let us work together and differently to come and make an impact. And gracias, Alcaldesa, for coming and always being willing to get in. South Ward 5 was the first place you came to visit right after the pandemic, after those poor 10 individuals succumbed to fentanyl overdoses. And we appreciate you're willing to always see us right in the problems of things. You are not afraid of that, and we need to see more of that. And we tend to see politicians from different states talking about DC crime as if they were the ones walking on the block. And I don't tend to see them doing it in their states or many other states. But I know one state, the 51st state of the union, is doing it because of people like you. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Guzman. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and it is indeed always good to be in Ward 5, South Ward 5, as you say, and we're at the beautiful Phelps School. We were supposed to be here last week and it rained. This week and it rained, but it is the summer. So we wanted to come together regardless of if we're able to kick off the walk to make sure that we're talking to community members. We have a ton of our agency directors who are here and ready to participate in the walk and answer your questions. I am pleased to be joined by the Ward 2 Councilmember Brooke Pinto, who also chairs the Council's Committee on Public Safety and the Member Pinto, a big round of applause. We are going to hear from her, and I want to acknowledge the hard and tough work that she is doing. She held a hearing on our bill, our Safer, Stronger bill, just last week, where over 100 residents and stakeholders participated, talking about what they believe would make our city safer and the need to act urgently. I was pleased today that Councilmember Pinto circulated an emergency piece of legislation that incorporates the heart of our Safer, Stronger legislation. So let's give her another round of applause. So I will I don't think I have to say more. No one can be happy with any young person or woman or child or anyone who has died on our streets because of gun violence. We recognize that it will take all of us, not just the police, not just the DC government, but community as well, to be a part of those solutions. We recognize that in the government that we're kicking the tires on all of our programs and services to make sure that we're doing more, faster, and better. But we also have to make sure that the public safety ecosystem in our city is supporting safe kids, safe families, and safe neighborhoods. So we are going to call on all of the members of the council to support Councilmember Pinto's emergency. And I know I hear from neighbors, I hear from business owners that they want us to do all in our power to make our city safer. So with that, I'm going to turn to Councilmember Pinto to say a few remarks about what's included in her emergency. Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bowser, and thank you for your continued focus on public safety. I think it is not an accident that we are here today and we continue to have these conversations, because it is the #1 issue that we are hearing about from residents every single day, and what we're seeing is not acceptable. And so thank you so much for your leadership in making sure that this is not only the #1 issue for you and your administration, but that we can continue moving forward in the right direction as a city to drive some of the crime and violence that we're seeing down. I am Brooke Pinto. I'm the Ward 2 council member, and I'm the chairwoman of the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. And there is a lot of work that we have been doing all year with our partners, and that we're going to continue to do around addressing what we think are 5 primary pillars around public safety, which is preventing crime and violence, supporting our police and our first responders, ending cycles of violence, making sure that people are held accountable, both perpetrators of crime and our government, and improving coordination between our local and federal partners. And all of our work on the committee is really driven towards those 5 pillars. I was pleased when a few months ago, the mayor submitted a piece of legislation called Safer Stronger with a lot of really great ideas to improve public safety in our city. Several weeks ago, I introduced a bill called the Accountability and Victims' Rights Bill, also seeking to address some of the gaps that we continue to see. And as Mayor Bowser mentioned, last week I had a hearing on the mayor's legislation. Over 170 witnesses signed up to testify, which really evidences to us how pressing this challenge is and how strongly people feel about this issue that has to be addressed. And so I am going to continue working every day on interventions and solutions that we need in a permanent capacity, and we have to act now. This is an emergency. We have to act urgently to address it. So briefly, the package that I introduced today really incorporates much of the items from the mayor's bill, much that we heard from community feedback from the hearing and in recent days and weeks, as well as my Accountability and Victims' Rights Bill. It seeks to prevent crime and violence by ensuring that we get the balance more right when it comes to pretrial detention. We have a value set in this city and this country that you are innocent until proven guilty, and people are released pretrial, except in cases where there is a flight risk that you might not show up to your hearing date, or your perceived danger to the community. And in our view, the balance is not right now on how we're describing danger to the community. So in the adult system, it takes out the requirement that a dangerous crime of violence be committed while armed, so that we can capture a larger category of cases, including carjacking, kidnapping, felony assault with a knife or other weapon. Those cases are currently excluded. In our juvenile system, we've also removed the requirement to commit a crime of violence while armed, so it can also include the crimes that we're seeing in our community so often right now around carjacking and assaults with knives and other things like that. You still have to have a substantial probability that you've committed the crime, and I think that kind of right sizes where we are with pretrial detention. It ensures accountability for offenders by creating a new offense of endangerment with a firearm, which makes it a felony for somebody to fire a gun in public. Other common sense things around GPS records to ensure that GPS records can be admissible in court if you are on pretrial release and go out and commit another crime. Protects victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence by extending liability for certain sexual offenses to contractors of organizations, directs courts to expedite cases where a child is involved as a victim. It increases data sharing and transparency, requiring the CJCC post data on the process and outcome of various of our programs, including our diversion programs. It also requires the Office of Unified Communication to post publicly where they are with staffing and other errors that we're seeing to make sure we can move forward with transparency there. And lastly, it rectifies our issue with the police department around chases to make sure that police can engage in a chase when public safety calls for it and when there's an emergency. So thank you very much to the mayor again for your leadership on this, to the many, many community members who participated at the hearing and throughout this process. We're going to keep working every day. There's a lot more to do around public safety, and this is an emergency today, and I hope that all my colleagues can support this package so we can get it passed on Tuesday and try to see some reduction in crime and violence that we're seeing this summer. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good. That's good for public safety. Thank you, Brooke Pinto. And I know I can count on everybody listening because I talk to you in the community. You're emailing us. You're calling about your concerns for your kids, for your families, for your business. And it's really important that you are also communicating to members of the council so that they are supportive of this emergency measure, which requires 9 votes out of the 13, in the permanent version that I know the council member will move in the fall. I want to now ask Chief Parsons to come up to brief on some of the questions that we've already gotten. We know a lot of the press are interested in. We met yesterday, or I meant yesterday, and I didn't also thank the Metropolitan Police Department, the United States Attorney, and the FBI for the detailed and thorough investigations that they conducted around Kennedy Street and around the people who were involved in drugs and weapons and mayhem in the area, who have been taken into custody and will also have their day in court. But we know that coordinated investigations like that take time. They take time from our federal partners, but also from our Metropolitan Police Department, and I am extremely grateful for their work. So with that, I want to turn to Chief Parsons.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your continued support and leadership. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Leslie Parsons. I am the Assistant Chief of the Investigative Services Bureau for the Metropolitan Police Department. And before I begin, I just want to introduce my colleagues. To my right, Assistant Chief Morgan Kane. She is the Assistant Chief of Patrol Services North. And Commander Sylvan Altieri, who is the commander of the 5th District, who I'm sure everybody's familiar with. I want to start out with a brief update on the Catholic University homicide. I know we talked about that yesterday. But I wanted to kind of update as to where we are. Before I do, I want to offer our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of our victim. And as I mentioned yesterday, approximately 8 a.m. on Wednesday, July 5th, 4th District officers responded to the 600 block of Alumni Lane at Catholic University for the report of an adult male that was found unconscious and unresponsive. DC Fire and EMS responded to the scene, transported the victim to a local hospital, where he unfortunately succumbed to his injuries. It was determined he had a gunshot wound. The victim has been identified as 25-year-old Maxwell Emerson of Crestwood, Kentucky. During yesterday's briefing, as I indicated, we were in the very early stages of the investigation. And I can tell you, based on video evidence, detectives observed the victim and suspect walking together and arriving at the location of the offense together. Detectives are still investigating if there is a potential connection between the victim and suspect. We know the suspect who fled the scene appears to be a male. He appears to be white, Latino, or have a very light complexion. He was last seen running away from the scene wearing all dark clothing, and he fled towards the 600 block of Monroe Street Northeast. Our detectives are still actively investigating and canvassing the neighborhood. I'm asking the public to please contact us if you have any information, video, images, or anything at all which may assist us in this case or any other homicide case we have. Please give us a call at 202-727-9099 or send us a text with your information to 50411, and that's 50411. In homicide cases, we do offer a reward of up to $25,000 for information that leads to the arrest and conviction of those responsible. I also want to remind the community about our gun tip reward program. The safety of our residents and visitors is MPD's #1 priority, and part of our crime-fighting strategy is safely removing illegal guns from our community. You've heard the mayor say this on numerous occasions, and I echo her sentiment. There are way too many illegal firearms in our community. Year to date, MPD has recovered approximately 1,400 firearms. 204 of those are considered ghost guns. 71 conversion or Glock switches have been recovered, and those are the devices that make a gun fully automatic. And while we'll continue to address this issue in the meticulous and focused fashion that we do, we'll utilize our federal partners and every resource at our disposal. I would ask the public, if you know anyone that illegally possesses a firearm, there is one immediate solution that'll keep you and your community safer. Please contact us. I'll repeat the number again. It's the same numbers. You can call our 24-hour command center at 202-727-9099, or you can send us a text tip at 50411, and you can be completely anonymous. Any gun tip that leads to the arrest and seizure of an illegal firearm results in a $1,000 minimum reward and a maximum reward of $2,500. Tips that lead to the arrest and seizure of a ghost gun or a firearm equipped with an automatic conversion device are eligible for an additional award of up to $5,000 for a total possible reward of $7,500. If you want to make an impact on public safety in the district, helping MPD with information about illegal firearms in our community will contribute to that goal. And lastly, another valuable tool for helping MPD address crime is through an investment in security cameras. The district's private security rebate program creates a rebate for residents and businesses to purchase and install security camera systems on their property and register them with the Metropolitan Police Department. This program is intended to deter crime and assist law enforcement with critical investigations, ones that help communities safe by identifying bad actors and holding offenders accountable. Videos are extremely helpful in closing or identifying leads for crimes. For example, in one analysis of homicides, we found that video footage, when available, helped to advance an investigation in 71% of the cases, and it helped to close it in 36% of the cases. So we know that videos are helpful, and we know that residents continue to ask how they can be of assistance. We're asking you to take advantage of the district's camera rebate program, and if you have information about illegal firearms in our community, please share that information with MPD. Thank you.
Remember, you have any remarks? So you want to be available for questions? Councilmember Parker.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ward 5. It is great to see so many neighbors and leaders here today to talk about public safety, which I know is top of mind for residents. It is great to see our commissioners from ANC 5D, where public safety is a regular topic, and I thank you for your partnership. I want to thank the mayor for coming here to Ward 5. We've had continued dialogue around support on the ground to support communities like Carver-Langston, and I also want to acknowledge the leadership of my colleague Brooke Pinto, who I've found to be thoughtful on certain matters of public safety. It was great to partner with her in introducing the Accountability and a Victims Protection Amendment Act a couple of weeks ago, and as she mentioned, she introduced it again as an emergency today, and I'm sure there's lots for my colleagues and I to dig into with those emergencies. But what I can say, and I'll speak for myself, is that I am looking forward to doing everything possible to keep neighbors safe, to advance real solutions that are backed by data, that are going to produce real results, and that I hear you. One of the things that I hear more often than not from Ward 5 residents is anyone listening? And I want you all to hear today, the reason why we're all here, the mayor has come to Ward 5, is that we do in fact hear you. We are not satisfied with what is happening and playing out on our streets. We refuse to give our streets over to those that will want to cause harm, not abide by the law. And I am willing and will continue to stand ready to partner with the mayor and my colleagues on the council to turn things around. So I'll stop there, and I'm looking forward to today's walk. But again, I want to assure Ward 5 neighbors that we're working around the clock to keep you safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions? Mark?
So we'll start with you, Mayor Bowser.
Sure.
Can you tell us what your message to the council is come Tuesday when they prepare to vote on this? You mentioned that you need 9 votes to get this through on an emergency basis, and what passing this or not passing this would mean for public safety?
I think that residents, to Councilmember Parker's point, definitely want us to hear them, but they also want us to act. And that's why it's so important that we've had a process. We introduced a bill, the council member introduced a bill, and I think that this emergency represents the heart of what we introduced, and I think that it will make us safer. And so I think the vote should be unanimous, that we advance this emergency this Tuesday, and then the council takes it up on a permanent basis, and there will likely be other measures, I'm sure, that the committee will consider to get that done as well.
Councilmember Pinto, there are a couple pieces of the mayor's proposal that you did not include, and I'm wondering if you could tell us why the Second Look Act, her portion on making that tougher, you left that out. Also increasing enhanced penalties for violent crimes against the disabled and for some transit workers. Why did you leave those out of the emergency legislation?
Sure. So let me repeat that there is a lot more work to do and a lot of longer term pieces that we're going to be working on in permanent legislation. Our number one focus on what we proposed today was what will help us address the crime crisis today that cannot wait until the fall. When it comes to Second Look, I believe in Second Look. I believe in the Incarceration Reduction Act, and that the main crux of that question that judges should be asking themselves is this person rehabilitated? And so relitigating the nature of the underlying offense doesn't allow them to answer that question on if the person's being rehabilitated. So that piece is not included in there. I'll also say I heard overwhelming testimony from members of the public in support of IRA at the hearing, and I share that support, so that's not included. In terms of the other pieces around enhancements, I think most of those are pretty good ideas, but given the public conversation we've had over the last several months with the revised criminal code, I do think it's important to make sure that enhancements are moved in a thoughtful way to make sure that there's proportional consequence to our whole code, and that's going to take us a little bit of time to work on this fall. So I thought that was something that could wait till the fall.
Along those lines, thank you. Along those lines, we heard from a lot of people at the hearing as well that there were some concerns about pretrial detention and that making it easier might, according to some research, actually eventually make our crime worse and more intense. So can you speak more about why you think making certain crimes or certain people more easily detained pretrial will actually make us safer in the immediate future?
Sure. So just in the adult system alone, in the first 3 months of 2023, we had over 100 cases where people were out on pretrial release for violent crimes and recommitted another violent crime. So that's just an unacceptable number. When it comes to our juvenile system, one of the pieces of overwhelming testimony that I heard at the hearing was that people had concerns with one of the recommended provisions that said a child can be held for that child's own safety. That piece is not included in this bill. How we framed this was to remove the requirement, which is a piece of the mayor's proposal, that there is you don't have to be armed while committing a crime of violence, so that we can make sure that things like carjacking and other violent crimes are included. So I do believe that it will help. It will certainly not solve all crime that we're seeing in the city, but I believe that the provisions in this emergency will allow us to see crime go down this summer.
Okay, so piggybacking off of that question in regards to that provision with juveniles and removing while armed, how do you reconcile that with advocates who do want accountability but say locking our young people up does not solve the problem, does not rehabilitate these young people, just may lead to more crime?
So I think a full-scale review and partnership with what's going on with DYRS and making sure that we are truly supporting rehabilitation and can set young people up for success after they have been detained is really important. And that work is ongoing. That is not ending today. But what is also important is that we send a clear message to victims that we are taking seriously the trauma that has been inflicted on you. And if somebody is committing a crime of violence against somebody and the court deems them to be a risk to the community, then it's important that that consideration is made in a detention decision, period.
Mayor Bowser, you could answer this question as well. We talked to a lot of neighbors here in Ward 5 who brought up the curfew, the teen curfew. We know it's on the books, not often enforced. Would that be something that you would explore? And do you believe that keeping our children indoors at a certain time of night would help prevent some of the violence that we're seeing after hours?
Yes, I do. But I don't think that should be, the government should be their first resort. It should be up to the family.
So will police enforce the curfew?
Police do enforce the curfew.
Do you believe it's helped?
I don't believe that, listen, you just asked the council member, why are you supporting locking more kids up? Then now you're asking me, why don't you lock some kids up for being out on the curfew? Right? Is that what you just said?
The curfew means you get locked up.
Well, yes, it does. It means that the police put you in the back of a police car and they'll take you home if your parents are home, or then they'll take you to sit in the police station and wait for somebody to come pick you up. Do I have that right? That's what it means. What would be better is if their parents kept them in the house if they weren't doing something productive at a certain hour. I don't know. I grew up here in Ward 5. You know what my father told me? There's nothing good in the street after 11 o'clock, Muriel. That's what he told me. That was 30 years ago, and it's still true today. That's what he told me. And I had to be inside. I had a rec center. There's too much drug dealing going around at that rec center at the time. I couldn't go there. So you know what? I hung out with my cousins and played with my friends on 7th Street. But that's what we kind of need to get back to, folks. We can do a lot in the government, but we can't do it without community and family doing their part. So we have to stay focused on that. So we're talking about pretrial, and I don't want to give anybody the impression that I want any person to go to jail who doesn't deserve it. I also believe, as the councilwoman has said, that every person is presumed innocent until proven guilty and they get a fair trial. I believe all of those things. But if I believe, too, that if you use a gun, everybody knows that you used the gun, the victims, your friends, and you walk out the next day with no consequence whatsoever, we are not going to drive down crime. That's true for juveniles who are acting like adults, and that's true for adults. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. Everybody that you see in this room want people to make good choices. They want people to put down guns. They want to make sure that petty arguments aren't turning into funerals. So we all want the same thing. So these issues are complicated. How we can have a system that enforces the law and is accountable, and also a system that is fair. We spend a lot of time and money, taxpayer dollars, trying to prevent violence. We spend a lot of time and money on opportunities. You've heard me say this before. We have thousands of kids right now doing the right thing in summer camp, in summer school, in summer jobs, thousands. And many of them are getting paid to do it. And so we have an obligation not to let a few people destroy that peace and tranquility for all of the rest of us. So that's what we're here to do. And so to your viewers who are asking you about curfew and if we could pick up more kids, the officers are out on the streets every single day. Let me ask Assistant Chief Morgan just to talk a little bit more about how curfew works and kind of the trends that we see around our young people out after those hours.
Good afternoon. So I do want to talk about curfew and truancy enforcement. that is something that we take our valuable officers, and we know that we are trying to grow the force in this moment and focus strictly on crime. But what we do in all 7 of our districts during the day, during the school year, we assign officers to pick up truant kids that are not in school during the hours that they are supposed to be there. They return the kids back to school. They release them to an administrator, right? So that's time from the community, that's time away from the neighborhoods, returning children to school that should be in school. So we allocate our personnel to do that. We also allocate our personnel as curfew cars. They're called curfew cars in all 7 districts, where they are assigned during the curfew hours to look for juveniles that should be safely at home. And then what happens is they have to pick them up, they're filling out the paperwork, figuring out where the children live, making sure that we're getting the right information and the right name, the right parental contact to return them home. And again, like the mayor said, if we cannot find a responsible adult to take custody of the child, then we have to take the child to a district, a police district, and we have to, then they sit there until we can contact the responsible adult to come and pick up the child. Now, what that does in the meantime, we have our station personnel that are now responsible for taking care of a child until we can find a responsible adult or turn them over to Child and Family Services. So that is valuable time, that's valuable effort, and we do that because we care. We do that because what we're seeing with our children, if they're out that time of night, they can be harmed or they can cause harm. So we make that investment in our children, but it does take away from ensuring that we are patrolling in the neighborhoods and making sure that crime is not happening. So to the point, we need the parents to take some accountability over where their children are. So again, constantly, every night, we're looking at the reports every day. And then our Youth and Family Engagement Bureau, now more time that we take away, they also follow up on the back end. We send all of our reports over to that bureau, and the personnel that are assigned there then do follow up. They're reaching out to the families. They're trying to find services. And we have children that we consistently pick up during the night. And so we're meeting with the parents, personnel meeting with the parents to figure out how we can serve and help that family, right? So that is, we are playing our part in that to get our kids off of the street. And so that is how that process works.
Okay, we'll take a few more. How are we doing outside with the weather? We can walk? Okay. So let's take a few more, and then we can answer more questions on the street. Yep.
One question first for Assistant Chief Parsons.
Sure.
Pardon me if I missed this. Do you have an update on the investigation into the Lyft driver who was killed? Looks like it was 4 young people caught on surveillance. Any reaction to that? And we're hearing that he was an immigrant who had helped the U.S. military in Afghanistan. Just kind of any investigative updates or any reaction to
Sure.
to that?
No, it's definitely a tragedy, and I think that dovetails into the conversation we just had about our young people out after dark, right? The investigation is active. I don't want to comment much on it. I don't want to speculate because it is active, but our detectives are making progress, and that's pretty much all I really want to say about the case at this time.
And then a follow-up off topic for Mayor Bowser. Councilwoman Nadeau is going to introduce emergency legislation that would create an outside review of the Office of Legal Counsel inquiry into Mr. Falchicchio's conduct. Wanted to see, would you sign that bill if they passed it on an emergency basis to have an outside review of that investigation?
I haven't seen the bill, but I don't support outside anything because we've had a thorough investigation. Any outstanding questions have been already referred to the Inspector General for the District of Columbia, which is the appropriate place. I would also be concerned about the length of time an outside reviewer who have every incentive to take a very long time and to run up a very big legal bill for the District of Columbia. So I would caution any foray into an unknown amount of time, an unknown amount of money, to come to the same conclusions. And this is the conclusion. I have a mayor's order against sexual harassment. We followed it to the letter. The MOLC substantiated the allegations made by one of my employees, and the person responsible is no longer in district government. Yes.
More for Chief Parsons.
Yep.
Chief, of the 10 murders since Friday and the Meade Street shooting, do you have any suspects? Have you made any arrests in any of those?
I'm thinking off the top of my head, I don't believe we've made any arrests in those cases, but those cases are progressing. Our detectives are working those cases. And when we do have arrests or we have more information to share, we'll definitely do that.
The family of the gentleman who was murdered at Catholic University is adamant that he did not know his assailant, that they are in from out of town visiting on a scholarship, that he's a teacher, and that your assertion that he knew him somehow has really left them, added insult to injury, the fact that they're grieving the loss of their son, and now somehow you're saying that it wasn't random. And to the community who is somewhat, I guess, comforted in that it might not be a random act, but now maybe it is, what do you say to the family who is, again, just adamant that he did not know his assailant, he doesn't know anybody in Washington, D.C.?
So before I address that, let's go back to your first question quickly. I just want to remind everybody, and especially our partners in the media, I did put out an image of a vehicle, our suspect vehicle in that Meade Street shooting, and I'd urge everybody to please look at that. If you have any information, to please call us. And then to address your question on the homicide, as I stated yesterday, we were very preliminary in the investigation. We were mere hours into the investigation when I gave that update on that case. And I believe I used words like preliminarily, potentially. I never asserted that they knew each other. Based off the evidence that we have discovered thus far in the investigation, as I said earlier, we know the victim and suspect were walking together and arrived where the offense occurred together. Our detectives are still investigating that case, and unfortunately, that's the only update I can give, and when we have more, we'll definitely give you more. But our detectives have been in contact with the family and have been working very close with the family of the decedent.
Last question.
Perhaps for both of you here, just wondering before we head out, what are some of the specific concerns that you're hearing from community members in this particular neighborhood, and are there any that you're hearing that perhaps don't apply to other areas in D.C.?
Commander.
Hi, good afternoon. No, most of the concerns we're hearing here are the concerns you're hearing everywhere in the city right now. People all want to feel safe. They don't want to be afraid, and they want to see more police. So that's what we hear everywhere. And here specifically, we've really adopted what the department came up with as far as intelligence-based policing. And while you might not see as many officers sitting on a corner, right now, for instance, this neighborhood we're in now has a 67% homicide reduction. That's 67% less homicides than a year ago. Now, each one of those represents a family and a victim, and I understand that, I'm not talking numbers, but we have to kind of gauge, is the progress working? So what we're trying to do to combat that and ease that fear is to let people know what we're doing and what's being successful. And so far in 5D, overall, our homicides are down, our assaults with dangerous weapons are down, our sex assaults are down. It's because of intelligence-based policing. And what that means is sometimes you're not going to see us. I have people reach out to me daily here saying, where are the police? What are they doing? Well, we're down here. We got 4 guns out of here last week. So we are down here conducting intelligence-based operations, targeting people we know to be people who are perpetrating violence on this community. And that's what we're trying to do to make people feel better. It's up to us, and hopefully with assistance from the press, to get out the information of what's going on that's helping and maybe sort of ease fears a little bit. Good? All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.